Live. The Hangout on Air is live.
We are live, coming to you live from Oklahoma City. Is there anybody out there? If you are out there, hello?
It says 0 viewers.
0 viewers? That should give us a hint. Well, this might be one of the great webinar jam practices, because guess what? As we record this, this is being recorded right now, Emily and Kelly, so that those people who didn't check in can watch it in its recorded version. So we're going to go ahead, if that's okay with you too.
Sure.
All right.
Should we give the latecomers 2 minutes?
Yes. Yes, we shall. Yes, we shall. Until then, let's talk about and practice our camera going back and forth here with Mary. Kelly, tell me how you got ready for this thing, because Prisoner of Azkaban has so much confusing Quidditch in it. How did you get ready for this?
I had to go back and reread the Quidditch chapters because they, in full honesty, they were never my favorite because I'm not a sports person. Surprise, surprise. But, oh my gosh, when I was reading, the first Quidditch chapter is called A Grim Defeat, and just the title alone and thinking about ring structure and how this, the third book, matches up with the fifth one, and thinking about how serious is the Grim, my mind just immediately just started firing, and there's so much in this third one. This Prisoner of Azkaban is packed with Harry thinking about death for the first time. Well, not maybe for the first time, but his own death, his own mental and physical limitations that are a part of his physical limitations within Hogwarts and Hogsmeade, and his mental limitations in dealing with the Dementors for the first time. And it's just, there's so much in this book, and it was so much fun.
All right. So you went back, you read the Quidditch thing, and yet it took your thinking into other books and other things we're going to see later, or hear later tonight. I don't want to take all of the thunder you're going to hit us with later tonight. Emily, what did you do to get ready for this program?
I just called Charlie Schreier. That's all I did.
Good thinking. I wish I had done that.
Yeah, I mean, basically the same. I just kind of zeroed in on the Quidditch scenes, and then thought about the larger book, and then I would go to the crisis scenes in the books, and compare. And there was a lot to compare there. And then for some, I just had to kind of think about it instead of hunting for details. To me, sometimes is just a wild goose chase. But if I just stop and just kind of think about how does this relate, then that's a lot easier. But I'm a big picture person, so that's kind of how I roll.
That's good, because I see the books in a big circle too, and it's kind of a funky, weird circle. But I was curious if that happened to you. I was struck, and we'll talk about this when everybody else is here, or anybody else is here. We'll talk about kind of how heavy on Quidditch the first 3 books are. And then we have basically a no Quidditch as Quidditch per se in Goblet of Fire, and then we have 2 more books where Quidditch is sort of important, but not really, not nearly as much as it was in 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
And then Deathly Hallows, again, nothing in terms of actual Quidditch matches in the stadium.
Right.
Did you make anything of that? I mean, that was what struck me going back and looking just at Quidditch. If you had said to me how many novels feature Quidditch matches, I would have said 7.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of reflex. Every Harry Potter novel has to have Quidditch matches in it. And then I realized that no, only 5 do, and really only 3 is the Quidditch match. Like everything in Harry's life turns on these Quidditch matches.
Well, hello, we have an Alice joining us. Hello, Alice.
Oh yeah.
Well, she can't talk. she's muted.
She messaged. That's good.
Oh, she messaged.
Yeah.
Now, I want my wife to be able to see the messages.
Okay. I can't see that. That's what
our dog has joined us.
Oh, nice. My husband is in charge of the
messages here.
So John, I'll just keep talking even though you have left the building. You know, she has always said that, she didn't like writing Quidditch, and she was relieved in books where she didn't have to write Quidditch. And I always just kind of thought, well, that's because she's not very sporty, maybe, and she doesn't like writing all those sport details. But then the more I think about it, the more I think, gosh, she is making this all so highly symbolic of the larger plots in each book, and then of the larger plot as a whole. That's got to be completely exhausting, to not only write the sport, but to write, the sport in correlation to all the events of the plot. So that I can imagine that she would just want to kind of punch the clock and get out of there on books where she didn't have to feature Quidditch, to take a break from it.
All right. I think we have the chat thing set up. Thank you, Emily. We're going to talk about just that question. But first, I want to introduce the subject of the program, what this Quidditch Artistry book by book is really about. And obviously, I'm going to kick it to you and to Kelly as we start this thing. First of all, welcome to a Hogwarts Professor webinar jam, Harry Potter for Nerds special. If you haven't got this book, you need to get this book. It has a large part of what we're talking about here today. All right.
Why is it upside down? When you hold it up that, it's upside down here. That's backwards.
Oh, well. Somebody tells me it's backwards. All right. Details.
It won't arrive at your house backwards.
That's right. We promise you. If it is, we'll send you this webinar backwards, and you can figure it all out. All right.
It'll be a code of ethics.
This show was inspired by the MuggleNet Academia interview that Keith Hawk and I did with Emily Strand about her contribution to Harry Potter for Nerds 2, in which we discussed Quidditch as a symbol set for how Harry Potter works. And what I call the Strand thesis. I think we're well beyond a theory with this. I think it's pretty demonstrable. But I want Emily to explain the Strand thesis of Quidditch symbolism, because what we're going to do tonight is explore a corollary to that thesis and see if it works out book by book. But the larger picture first. So Emily, do me a favor here and explain to me the large picture of how the Quidditch games parallel, reflect, echo the narrative structure of the whole series. What's going on in the books?
All right. Well, a lot of people have problems with Quidditch as a sport. Many people don't. Many people play it, relish it and play it. But a lot of people, especially when the books were first rolling out, had a lot of problems with Quidditch as a sport. They felt like it didn't make sense. I think I've told John before, I did a Google search of the phrase "Quidditch doesn't make sense" and got 2 million hits. And the themes running through these complaints with Quidditch, you can kind of lump them under two headings. One, that there are two different spheres of play in Quidditch that are confusing for a spectator, or even confusing for a player. So you've got two different things going on. It's like, is it a team sport, or is it an individual sport? Where do we focus our action? We got these two spheres of play. And then the other one was that the other complaint with Quidditch was that one sphere of play is far more consequential than the other. Catching the snitch is worth 150 points, whereas you score with the quaffle, it's only 10. And so, but these are the two things that I think make Quidditch so obviously a symbol of the larger plot of the Harry Potter series. So first, we've got these two spheres of play. There's very little overlap. So the one sphere is the chasers scoring points on the goal posts with the quaffle. Okay. Then the other sphere of play are the two seekers attempting to catch the golden snitch. We've got a little bit of overlap between these two spheres of play with the bludgers, who may harass either the chasers or the seekers, depending. It's kind of random who they harass most of the time. And then, of course, the beaters are going to pursue that overlap and protect either the seeker or the chasers, depending on who the bludgers are harassing. So you've got really two separate games going on with very little overlap. So of course, this to me really reflects the two spheres of play that go on both in each book and then also in the larger series. The trio have their own sphere of action in the series. And then there's everybody else, from the trio's obsession with the Sorcerer's Stone in the first book, and their adventure to rescue it, without any adults at the end of that book, to book 7, where they're, in secret, exiled from everyone else, far away, hunting for the Horcruxes by themselves, while this other sphere of action is going on between the Death Eaters and the Order of the Phoenix. So you've got these two distinct spheres of action in the narrative. And so to me, Quidditch is a pointer to that. It just points everybody to this reality. And in both of these realities, both Quidditch and in the larger narrative, it comes down to Harry acting alone. So the trio sphere, the seeker sphere, becomes Harry the seeker sphere. So at some point he has to act alone. And again, the beaters can protect the seeker, but they can't catch the snitch for him. He has to catch the snitch. So those are the two spheres of play reality, and how that kind of reflects the larger narrative of the series. So then we have the other problem that people have of the snitch. The one sphere of play being way more consequential than the other sphere of play. So the snitch, catching the snitch, is 150 points, whereas the scoring on the goals is only 10. So people say that this is ridiculous. This is turning a team sport into an individual sport. This doesn't happen in sports. This is dumb. And so, but to me, it just reflects the fact that the trio's sphere of play is really the only one that matters. The other one matters. Yes, people die, people get hurt. But if they don't get rid of those Horcruxes, it's all lost. The whole world is lost to Voldemort. And so that intentionally ridiculously high point value of the snitch just reflects that everything is riding on what Harry has to do with those Horcruxes. So those are kind of the two main ways. And of course, in the essay, I go into a lot about the players and even the alchemical symbolism of Quidditch. But those are the two main ways that the Quidditch acts as a symbol set for the larger narrative.
All right, that's fantastic. Really, I mean, Emily, what you've done here. I mean, I don't want to blow this up into more than it is, but I think it's a super significant find in terms of Potter punditry. I mean, to me, this is like when Travis Prinzi talked about Fabian socialism in terms of understanding the politics of Harry Potter, sort of blew a whole door open to new things. Quidditch has always been mysterious to Harry Potter fans. I mean, they may play the game and this and that, but there's always been what is this in here for? About it, and I think really the Strand thesis opens this up. That basically she's writing a story. It's metafiction. She's writing a story inside the story, which tells you what the story is really about. That this game is the game of the larger plot. Now, if you want to hear more about that, first read Emily's brilliant piece inside Harry Potter for Nerds 2. Then you can listen to the discussion on Muggle Academia. At the end of that discussion on Muggle Academia, we started talking about, what next? Where do you take this theory next? And I thought of the ring composition thing. When we found out that the whole Harry Potter series was a ring at the end of Deathly Hallows, people were talking about it already when Order of the Phoenix came out. But when we knew for sure it was a ring at the end of the whole 7-book series laid out as a circle, the next question was, well, is each book a ring? Because that's the way ring compositions work, is there are rings inside of rings, and yeah, sure enough, we found out that every single book is a perfect turtleback narrative. Now that, so when we got the Strand thesis here that the structure of Quidditch as such is the structure of how the narrative works in the series. The Granger corollary was, it's Hermione more than John, but the Granger corollary was, does it work in each book as well? Is the Quidditch game, the matches inside each book, does it reflect the predominant themes, structures, transformations, whatever, inside that book? Do we see that inside the story within the story as well as the novel that we're reading? So here we are tonight. We've got Kelly Arazi in San Diego. We've got Emily Strand in, where are you in Ohio? In Ohio.
The heart.
The heart, the dead center of Columbus, Ohio. It's a circle, right? It's a mound somewhere there. And, of course, I'm in Oklahoma City. And we're going to talk tonight about the 7 books of Harry Potter and about what happens in each book in the Quidditch matches and whether that reflects or not. This is going to test the Granger corollary to the Strand thesis. I think the Strand thesis has pretty much been demonstrated, that Quidditch is actually the game that Rowling plays in each one of the books, and you're as a reader reading the book, you're having the same experience as someone down at the Quidditch pitch watching a match. So let's see if that's true for each one of the books. Emily, you're going to start us off with Philosopher's Stone, and we're going to do this fairly quickly. We're going to do 2 or 3 minutes, I hope, just on what's the Quidditch play inside that book, what's the key takeaway from the series, and do we have a correspondence between the Quidditch games inside the series and its takeaway points that Rowling gives us. So Emily, start us off here. Philosopher's Stone. How do we meet Quidditch in the first book?
Well, that's a great way to start because we meet Quidditch when Harry meets Quidditch, obviously, and it strikes me that in chapters 4 and 5, Harry learns about his background and his history with Lord Voldemort in chapter 4, and Quidditch in chapter 5 from the very same person, and that is, of course, Hagrid, who marvels with nearly equal intensity at his lack of knowledge of both. So he's sort of as just as flabbergasted that Harry doesn't know about Lord Voldemort as he is about Harry doesn't know about Quidditch. And it strikes me in chapter 9, the Midnight Duel, that Harry has his first turn upon a broomstick. And this is a significant turn upon a broomstick. It's not a joyride, mind you, although it's very joyful for him. But it's in order to stop an incident of Draco bullying Neville. He's getting Neville's significantly round Remembrall back. So Harry is already using his flying skills to capture round things and to aid the oppressed. So those are just striking to me. So, and indeed, in the scene that follows with McGonagall inviting, showing him to Wood and, suggesting he be on the Quidditch team, Harry's own history with Voldemort, Harry's Quidditch playing, like his history with Voldemort, seems to be wrapped up in his family history as well. McGonagall tells him, your father was a Quidditch player as well, and he's just learned this, this information about his family's role, in this war with Voldemort and everything. So, and then it also struck me in looking at the end that when Harry confronts Quirrell-Mort, as we call him, the very first thing they talk about is Quidditch. And what happened on the Quidditch pitch with Harry's broomstick being jinxed, and that it was Quirrell and not somebody else. So onto the book, onto the Quidditch match. The only important Quidditch match in this book. So there's a few, but this is really the only important one. It's chapter 11 called Quidditch. So Harry's broomstick begins to malfunction during the match, and Snape is wrongly accused, of course, by Hermione, to be the one making it happen, to be the one jinxing Harry's broomstick. And this parallels and also forms part of the wrongful suspicions that the trio harbor against Snape throughout the entire book regarding his desire to seize the Philosopher's Stone. The reality is Snape is chanting the counter curse to protect Harry from his flailing broomstick, just as he is attempting throughout the book to protect the stone from capture by Quirrell. He's probably doing the most out of anybody but Dumbledore to protect the stone. When Harry catches the snitch in this match, I think this is really significant too. It is not with his hands. We all know this from Book 7. Without description in the match, he just simply ends up with the snitch in his mouth. Okay, right? And he spits it out and holds it up, and the game is won. So this seems to parallel to me Harry's capture of the Philosopher's Stone in chapter 17, The Man with Two Faces. Harry doesn't physically grab the stone out of the mirror. There's no struggle for the stone. Rather, it is simply inside his pocket after he looks into the mirror of Erised with the right desire. But Harry tries to distract Quirrell from this by telling him he sees himself winning the House Cup for Dumbledore, which is sort of like the distraction of that second sphere of play. And so I think that parallel between him catching it in his mouth, where it's just inside him, and him rescuing the stone just by having that right intention and it being in his pocket, I think that's a really significant thing. Just a couple more non-match stuff that I observed from book one. Throughout the book, house points are a really big concern. Harry, Ron, and Hermione end up losing Gryffindor 150 points for their antics in the Forbidden Forest chapter. And this expresses that two spheres of play in the plot. The trio loses these points while they're really actually up to something that's much more important than the House Cup, but no one recognizes this from them. And I think that that's an interesting parallel with that number 150, and then the point value of the snitch. But then, of course, in the end, Dumbledore awards them those few extra points that just happen to total 160. So 150 for Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and 10, a nice score with the quaffle for Neville for standing up to his friends. So we have a little bit of Quidditch in the eucatastrophe of the book.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Those two things, the linkage of how Harry catches the snitch and how he is in front of the mirror, and those two 150 points, those are great takeaways. Harry, this is the introductory novel. We meet Harry. We learn about his place in this. We learn how Quidditch works. It's an introductory thing. And we really see the essence of Harry, that really isn't going to be his hand, which is his willful thing, but it's really going to be more the kind of person he is, how he takes it into his mouth or whatever, or it comes into his passionless desire for what's good in the end. And again, Emily, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Kelly, do you see anything else in that book? I mean, that's a lot. We meet Harry as a Quidditch player, as the Seeker, and we see him in the end winning the 150 points plus 10 for friend Neville. I'm still chewing on that one, Emily. That's great. Kelly, anything else?
I love that, Emily. I never thought about the 150 points mirroring the snitch. No, but I can't help but think of book 7 and his. I don't know if you want to go there yet, but Harry's finding the stone in the snitch. And
let's not go there yet. But yes,
yeah, okay. We'll save it.
You're hot on something there. Yep.
Yeah, really, that's the way that circle ends up, and I think that may be the most important part of the Quidditch in Philosopher's Stone is how we get it to the sort of the non-Quidditch thing, because Quidditch is really Harry's first positive identity. Like in all schoolboy novels, the chief protagonist is a sportsman. Tom Brown with cricket and with rugby. Here we have Harry and Quidditch. It seems to work out wonderfully. Then we're going to see in the book it just has no Quidditch to speak of per se. There's a lot of Quidditch from the first book. All right, second book, Chamber of Secrets. Emily, I'm going to go back to you on this. This book, I have to confess, my favorite thing about Quidditch in this book is how Rowling decides to explain how Quidditch works again by having Colin Creevey pester Harry. And so as they walk down to the pitch, Harry explains the game to this first-year student. I was reading that this morning, and I was just so charmed that she worked it into the story in a very believable fashion as a second-year student, a sophomore, explains really petulantly to this newbie how the game works. But anyway, tell me whether how this works, how the Quidditch in that story, which is critical really to the whole story, how that reflects what we get about Harry in that book.
Well, I owe my notes here to Charlie Schreier, who is online here. Hi, Charlie. Good to see you. He did this for us. He went through the books and with fine-tooth comb, with an engineer's eye, and found some great connections with between the Quidditch match against Slytherin and the overarching plot. So here we go. So first of all, we know that match is really marked by this rogue bludger. And nobody knows, the trio, they have no idea who has enchanted this bludger to harass Harry during this game. And it's the whole game, it's focused on taking his head off and keeping him from catching the snitch. Harry's constantly hindered. This is just a parallel to the fact that throughout this whole book, Harry's constantly hindered by other enchantments that keep him away from his life at Hogwarts. So the letters are prevented from his friends. His King's Cross entrance is prevented. You know, he and Ron have to take the car to the Whomping Willow, which is not, you know, it doesn't end up well and everything. So this is kind of you know, this enchantment of this bludger kind of points to this overarching rogue bludger throughout the book. So secondly, Harry and company wrongly assumed that the bludger was bewitched by Malfoy. Of course, they never suspect that it was Dobby, because Dobby seems to be some sort of an ally to Harry Potter. He's warning Harry Potter. He's trying to protect Harry Potter. And Charlie says, you know, there are a number of misidentifications in this book as a whole. So Harry, you know, is thought to be the heir of Slytherin by some people. Then, of course, Harry and his friends think that Malfoy is the heir of Slytherin. And no one would expect that it's Ginny opening the Chamber of Secrets, because she's supposed to be an ally. So just like they don't suspect Dobby in the game, they don't suspect Ginny in the overarching plot. So there's a failure to identify an ally as the source of a problem with Ginny and Dobby, neither of whom are acting on their own volition, of course. So then, with this rogue bludger, Gryffindor calls a timeout, and the team meets on the issue of the bludger, and they decide not to inform Madam Hooch. And this is a great spot by Charlie, because Charlie says, you know, I've played sports for many years. This is ridiculous. They think that Madam Hooch is going to call a forfeit if they report on this bludger. Why would she ever do that? Like, what team has ever, what issue like this is ever held against a team? You know, I mean, if it's a malfunction of equipment, you know, why would it be called anyway? So Charlie smelled right through that one, and I support that. Harry meets with Ron and Hermione about the chamber, but then they decide, you know, they don't want to tell Dumbledore or anybody about the voices and everything because they're nervous. They don't want to. And so this is just, again, you know, an expression of them working discreetly without, you know, adult interference or adult assistance to resolve the issue. Harry says, go it alone in the Quidditch game, you know, against the bludger, and he kind of releases the Weasleys, and they make the similar decision with regard to Dumbledore and the administration about Harry hearing these voices. And again, it's probably not the best decision, but it forms part of that pattern of every book. So then Charlie spotted that Malfoy, the other Seeker on the Slytherin team, spends his time taunting Harry during the match, you know, and he's kind of unfocused on the task at hand. Whereas when Harry and Tom Riddle are in the Chamber of Secrets together, Tom Riddle's kind of distracted by his task by Harry. You know, Tom Riddle's supposed to be killing Muggleborns, and you know, Harry's not a Muggleborn, and so he seems to have sort of lost sight of his goal. So there's a little parallel. And then in the match, the snitch appears right by Malfoy's left ear, and Charlie said he didn't find a parallel to that, but I wonder if it isn't the appearance of Fawkes in the Chamber of Secrets. You know, Fawkes with the golden beak appearing and sitting right on Harry's shoulder in the Chamber of Secrets, and of course Riddle doesn't catch the significance of this. And this is what Harry needs. Fawkes carrying the Sorting Hat. This is what Harry needs to win. And so Harry plays dumb, not to mention
that the Fawkes's tears are immunity for the basilisk's fangs, right? I mean,
oh, we're getting to that. We're getting to that because Harry plays dumb and doesn't cue Malfoy about the snitch, and goes forward to get it. He gets his arm broken, but he ends up catching the snitch anyway and winning the game. So then in the chamber, Harry briefly plays into Riddle's stalling, talking to him for a while, but then as soon as he gets a chance, he throws himself at the victory, and Harry's stabbed in the arm, once again in the arm, by the Basilisk fan, but he ends up killing the diary, saving Ginny Weasley, and Fawkes. Then, of course, the tears of Fawkes save him, just like this catching the snitch saves the game for Harry, even though his arm is broken. So I thought that those were some really important parallels that Charlie pointed out. So thanks a ton to Charlie Schreier for those comments. Professor Schreier, shall we say.
Have you got any more on that, Emily?
No, that's it. That's.
I'm just going to real quickly say, yeah. I love Charlie's stuff, especially that thing about the arm. That's a great catch, as they'd say. But I think the Granger corollary in number 2 is mostly about that first encounter on the Quidditch pitch where Oliver Woods got them up early, and they go out to the Quidditch pitch, and the Slytherins arrive with a letter from Snape saying, we have the rights to practice here. And of course what happens is they go back and forth, and Hermione says the ugly thing about at least all of these Gryffindor players got where they are on talent rather than their parents buying them equipment and getting here because of their wealth. And then Draco uses the M word. And, you know, Ron, his spell backfires, all these things. We get the vomiting slugs. But what we mostly get is we get the introduction to the whole mud-blood, pure-blood dichotomy.
Yeah.
And that, and of course, the big match is with Slytherin, and so we have the whole. We get that acted out in the air, on the field, but also in the drama of the story. We get Harry's, you know, internal drama is about whether he's a Slytherin or not, whether he's the heir of Slytherin. And so we get this pure blood, mud blood thing from the Quidditch pitch, and in the air, that drama between the two teams is the large takeaway. Because I mean, the big takeaway from this book is Dumbledore's comment to Harry in the big Dumbledore denouement, where he says it's not what we're born with, Harry. It's our choices that tell us who we really are, and that's laid out on the Quidditch pitch. That's where we meet that drama. That's where we find out all about it. Really, that's where we see it in its dynamic play, and we see Harry win. Harry, you know, pulls it out in the end, just the way he pulls it out in the Chamber of Secrets, as Charlie's notes described. All right, that's more than I wanted to say on this. Kelly, you got any more for this? Because Kelly, we're about to go into the most difficult Quidditch book of the series.
I was exactly about to say that, John. It's for me, book 2 is all about Harry's own struggle with his identity, and wondering if he could be Slytherin. And I mean, Slytherin not by blood, but at heart too, which is we know he's not. And I don't think it's a mistake that the first, or by chance, that the first match is against Slytherin, and right before them, is it right before the match or after practice or something like that, that the M word comes out, and we really do see what type of person, what type of team, in fact, the Slytherin team is. You know, they did buy their way in. They do accept bribes. They're not really out for anybody but themselves, and they're not out to really win for them. You know, they don't do any effort for themselves.
Yeah.
They're more.
And they lose. And the lesson Rowling draws for us, you know, the sum of the game is that the Slytherin team loses because Malfoy isn't that talented. The snitch is right there in his ear,
Right.
and because he's not that good at it, he loses.
Yep.
He's busy taunting Harry.
That's
and
right.
the same, we see the same thing in the book 3. The Slytherin team is chosen not based off of their true talent on a broomstick, but their ability to beat people up. They spend the last match just completely hitting and grabbing and cheating, and I even pulled the quote. We see it's the dirtiest game Harry had ever played, and probably will ever play, because the Slytherin team is less about winning the right way and more about preventing another team from winning. And we see that in the book previous, in book 2 as well.
All right, Kelly, I want you to tell us about these. I mean, we've got the segue from book 2 to book 3. Tell us about the Quidditch matches in book 3. And am I wrong in thinking that really of the 7 books, 3 is the book which is most about Quidditch?
I don't think that you're wrong. I think Quidditch, the tensions are high when it comes to Quidditch in book 3. Harry loses his first game. Harry's broomstick is destroyed, which is very meaningful. Harry gets a new broomstick but can't ride it because they have to see if it's jinxed. And in the end, Harry wins the House Cup, the Quidditch Cup for the first time, and Wood wins, and it's Oliver Wood's last year, as Quidditch captain and at Hogwarts. And so there's a lot riding on Quidditch. I think more so in the previous 2 books. This book is also different in the fact that the book 1 and book 2 we saw a direct threat from Voldemort through a different character. We don't have Voldemort in this book. Instead, we have the Prisoner of Azkaban. We have a different type of threat in Sirius Black. And what that means for Harry is he is extremely, time and time after again in this novel, restricted on what he can do. He performs magic in the Dursley's house. He thinks he's going to go to Azkaban. He leaves. He goes on the night bus. He finds his way to the magical wizarding world, but again, he is restricted in that he cannot leave. He can go to Leaky Cauldron, he can go to Diagon Alley, but that's it. And he is watched. And Fudge comes down, the Minister of Magic comes down and watches him, and Hagrid watches him, and people try to make sure that he is okay. But again, he's restricted in where he can go and what he can do. When he gets to Hogwarts, he can't go to Hogsmeade with his friends because he's restricted. Everybody wants it's for his own safety, but he can't do these things. Of course, he finds out a way to kind of do them instead, which is an important part of it. But when it comes to the Quidditch scenes that we have, the very first one is, as I said, the chapter itself is called Grim Defeat. And the first game is very, very grim. It's pouring rain. Nobody can hardly see. The skies are dark. Everybody's having just a miserable time of it. No one can do anything. Everyone feels like Harry does in this book, trapped and helpless. And this is the only time that we see Dementors on the field. So not only is this harsh physical weather conditions that make it they physically restrain Harry, but mentally the Dementors come and drain Harry for everything that he can be. Harry falls down from, I forget the exact height, but he nearly falls to his death because of not just the physical strain, but the mental strain as well. And as I said, his broom is entirely shredded. It hit the Whopping Willow. The broomstick that he never lost a game on, the broomstick that made him love, Quidditch, it's gone. And I think there's an important lesson to learn that Harry learns that something he loves cannot come back from the dead, even though you think that there could be a very simple solution for this. We saw in the book too that Harry's his bones can be mended with Skelligro, but there's no fixing his nimbus. And I think that's a really important lesson he learns, especially when you bring it to the fifth book, which is the third book's parallel in the ring structure, because, of course, at the end of that, Harry learns the same lesson over again. There's nothing that can bring back the dead. And again, this is a lesson that we learn in Book 7. So this first chapter is very important. There's lots of stuff going on that actually has very little to do with the Quaffle and the Snitch. So it's really, really interesting. The second Quidditch match that we see is just 2 chapters later. It's called Gryffindor versus Ravenclaw. Harry has been given the Firebolt. He has also learned the Patronus spell, which is very important to his overall transformation of the whole book. That's really what this book is about, I think. Harry has to learn. He has to look deep inside himself and see what he's afraid of, and what makes him happy, which are 2 very important things that no 13-year-old really thinks about, but Harry must examine. And so he has his Firebolt in the second match. Everybody has a new hope because nobody has this broom in the school, but he does. So they feel triumphant. They feel like nothing can bring them down. During the match, Lee Jordan is not even commenting on what's happening because we don't actually know what's happening during the game, because Lee Jordan is just talking about how he's basically an advertisement for the Firebolt at this point. And we see near the end of the match the fake Dementors that the Slytherin team came out. They came out with their hoods, and it's Malfoy and Crabbe and Goyle and the Slytherin's captain. Bill? I forgot his name. Starts with an F.
Flint?
Flint. Yeah, Flint. But there is a big triumphant win because Harry produces the Patronus, and yes, they're fake Dementors, but he produces it nonetheless, and he feels really great about it. And yes, Lupin does tell him, well, it wasn't quite Dementors, but great Patronus anyways.
Mm-hmm.
The end of that chapter actually ends with Sirius Black entering the castle for the first night, which I thought was sort of interesting. The last chapter we see with Quidditch, last match, is the final versus Slytherin, which again I don't think is by chance here. And importantly, Harry must win the snitch only if Gryffindor is up more than 50 points, so he has to wait. And again, in the narrative says, never in anyone's memory had a match approached in such highly charged atmosphere. And that's exactly what you were saying, John. This is the book all about, more so about Quidditch than we've seen so far. There's lots of concern with Harry's safety and Harry's concern with his firebolt safety, because Slytherins have spent the week before the match tripping, kicking, abusing the players of the Gryffindor Quidditch team, and Harry's one of them. So just like there's a great concern with keeping Harry safe in this whole book, there's a smaller concern within the Quidditch, the last Quidditch match, in keeping Harry safe, and Wood actually has him escorted from class to class because he's so scared. So I thought that was really important as well. Right before the match, Harry sees Crookshanks and the Grim, and has for the first time sort of questions the Grim really existing, and because he looks like a dog, and Crookshanks can see him as well, so how can he be the Grim? So that's an important moment too. It's like kind of him getting over this fear, just as he's learning to conquer his fear itself. Yeah, as I said, it was the dirtiest game Harry had ever played. And as far as the winning snitch, I thought I totally missed this when I read it the first 10 times, 15 really, if I'm being honest, time I read this book. There's this great moment. Harry almost doesn't get the snitch because what happens with Angela, she's going to score, and the Slytherin team, because they're just burly people who want to, beat the other team up, and since they're cheaters, go in front of the goals to block her entirely. Harry, just like a Patronus, shoots right in, and they disperse. And right after, he sees that Malfoy's going for the snitch. So I think that this parallels Harry's own Patronus, stepping in at the last when he and Hermione go back in time at the end of the novel, and Harry has to step outside and save himself and save Hermione and Buckbeak and Sirius by shooting that Patronus into a sea of Dementors. So I think there's lots of parallels, and I think it works alchemically as well too. There's just lots of things.
Emily, here's a weird question for you, and for you and for Kelly. It's the only book in which, and correct me if I'm wrong here, they have a set program of when each team plays each other, and Gryffindor Slytherin is by nature the first match of the season by scheduling, for hundreds of years. In this book, that's canceled because Buckbeak bites Draco, and they say his arm is hurt, and out he goes. Am I wrong here?
I think you're right.
I had totally forgot about that. Yeah.
Okay, so we instead of it being in the right sequence where the beginning is where it's supposed to be, the beginning is at the end. It's almost as if we're going backwards in time in the Quidditch matches. And I just thought of that because of what Kelly said about this Harry acting out the Patronus. In a way, the Quidditch matches, because they're inverted and upside down, we're seeing the reverse time thing going on inside the Quidditch match that happens in that book, which of course, because the time turns, is the only time that happens in the series.
Good spot.
How about that? Thank you, Kelly, for that image of Harry acting like his father's Patronus scattering the bad guys. That's the catch. All right. Emily, excuse me. What did you have, Emily, about again? Prisoner of Azkaban is, the Quidditch is so intense. It takes over all fields of the story. It's really the only book in which Quidditch is almost in every scene somehow reflecting how people are acting to each other and this and that. It's like we're all down there with the quaffle rather than up with the seeker stuff. Was that your impression too? What did you get out of that?
Yes. Yeah. Are we ready to move on to book 4? I'm so anxious because there's no behind. And yet,
I wanted to give you a spot there to let me know about this. Book 4. Okay, we go from everything being Quidditch to book 4 in the Twilight Wizard Tournament and no Quidditch.
Right? She must have tired herself out with all that Quidditch.
I think that's when she said, "I'm pretty much done with the Quidditch stuff. I'm so tired of Lee Jordan doing advertisements in his play-by-play." No, but I suspect though you found something about Quidditch in that 4th book, which most of us have just said it's a cipher.
Yeah. We actually have really significant Quidditch in this book because we have the Quidditch World Cup. Oh. And it's the book's marked by the absence of Quidditch at Hogwarts, but the Quidditch World Cup is really, really significant. I think it's in interesting ways. So first of all, the Quidditch World Cup for the first time connects Harry to the wider international wizarding world outside of Hogwarts, especially in the chapter Bagman and Crouch, chapter 7, and chapter 8, the Quidditch World Cup. He and the reader meet international witches and wizards for the very first time. This parallels what's going to happen in the larger plot because Harry and his friends are going to experience, his classmates are going to experience the Tri-Wizard Tournament, which opens Hogwarts up to hosting students from other countries in an event that the whole wizarding world is going to be interested in. Of course, Victor Crumb's, back to the Quidditch World Cup at the beginning, Victor Crumb's snitch catch, which ends the match but loses the game for Bulgaria, is a significant lesson for Harry in the larger 7-book plot, of course, and I've already dealt with that in the essay in Harry Potter for Nerds 2. But he applies
buy the book.
But he applies this lesson at the end of book 4 as well. This is really his first place where he applies this lesson. When Voldemort is forcing him to duel with him in the graveyard, in chapter 34, Priori Incantatem, Harry, on page 660, he refuses to bow. Voldemort's commanding him to bow. And then on page 661, we read, quote, "He was going to die like Cedric. He was going to die. There was nothing he could do about it. But he wasn't going to play along. He wasn't going to obey Voldemort. He wasn't going to beg." So already we see Harry applying the Crumb lesson of going out of a hopeless situation on your own terms. He actually uses this to help him resist the Imperio curse. Voldemort's using the Imperio curse to get him to bow. And this is, Harry resisted. This is actually very, very difficult for a 14-year-old unqualified wizard. And then, on page 662, as Voldy is going to Crucio Harry again, we read, quote, "With the reflexes born of his Quidditch training, he flung himself sideways onto the ground, and he proceeds to evade Voldemort like a good seeker knows how to do." But here's my favorite thing that I noticed. It says, in that graveyard scene, it says, when Harry and Voldemort's wands connect, it says, they're described as being, quote, "enclosed in a golden dome-shaped web, a cage of light." That's on 663, which really, really echoes the description of the Quidditch World Cup Stadium in Chapter 8, which is described as having, quote, "immense gold walls surrounding the field," on page 95, which gave off a, quote, "mysterious golden light which seemed to come from the stadium itself." That's on 96. But instead of hearing Vila Song, because that's what we hear in the Quidditch World Cup Stadium, we hear Vila Song, and it drives all the men crazy. Harry, in this moment, hears Phoenix Song, and it guides him to do what he needs to do to get out of there. And finally, just as the Portkey took Harry and Cedric to and from the World Cup, guided by their fathers, well, for Harry, in Harry's case, it's Mr. Weasley. a portkey both delivers Harry and Cedric to Voldemort in the graveyard, and with the guidance of Harry's own father, James. James is the one that tells Harry what to do, that gives him the idea to grab the portkey. A portkey, again, delivers Harry safely back to Hogwarts bearing Cedric's body. So I thought that those were not coincidental little parallels between the Quidditch World Cup and the crisis of the story.
No, those aren't accidental. And really that portkey thing is really bizarre because it's the only portkey we've ever met in the Wizarding world that takes you back. Portkeys aren't round trip objects. They only take you one way. Harry's found the only portkey that will give you the return trip. I mean those parallels are magnificent for a book that I thought had no Quidditch in it. You've shown that really all the action in the end is basically demonstrated in the only Quidditch match inside the books, and we have the whole international scene brought in, which is the action of all the Triwizard Tournament is these international players that appear. We have Victor Crumb in person from the Quidditch match, making his big play and his role in the shipping with Hermione and Ron. Really, you've demonstrated, Emily, that not only is there a lot of Quidditch in a book that's not supposed to have any Quidditch in it, but that the Quidditch does what the Granger Corollary says it's supposed to do. It's an echo and a reflection, and there's correspondence between it and what's going on inside the book. Wow, let's go on. Kelly, you got anything more about Goblet of Fire, which I thought was going to be our time to make up time?
Oh yeah. I was just gonna. I don't remember. I'm sorry. I don't remember if you mentioned this in your essay, but it's almost like what happens in the Quidditch World Cup with Crumb getting the snitch but losing the match is almost the opposite of what happens to Harry about winning the tournament but losing the ultimate, losing Cedric.
That's true.
Yeah,
he doesn't even care about the money. He just gives the money away.
He wins, but he loses, and this is the opposite with Crumb. But yeah.
Well, and the ultimate loss is that Voldemort has returned to bodily form. Yeah. Right. Yeah, I mean, poor Cedric aside,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He's really just a point scored against the opposite team, Yeah.
And that's, I mean, and that the fallout of that is again binding together the larger Wizarding world and saying this is, we're together and we have to fight this evil as one community and not as separate people. Teams don't matter anymore.
Right.
Huh. Yeah. Okay, ladies, this is great. It's even better than I thought it was going to be.
Good stuff.
Now my turn. Order of the Phoenix. Order of the Phoenix is a special book for me because of all the books. It was the 3-year summer. We waited a very long time. Between Goblet of Fire, Rowling takes her vacation. I think she writes most of Casual Vacancy in that gap, but she also writes a very long book. She writes the longest book. Here it is. Up here on the shelf. Remember how big this thing is? It's a monster. They talked about the physical therapist talked about blue book disease because young kids put this in their backpack and they got sway back from carrying this book around in their backpacks. Now, the Quidditch inside that series is really pretty limited. For a book that's that long, we don't get that much Quidditch. And Kelly and Emily will correct me if I'm wrong here. But the Quidditch match that there is not only important to the whole plot of the story, it reflects the whole story. And let's almost go backwards here and talk about the whole point of the story. The whole point of the story is this is Harry's Negretto novel. This is the book in which everything to which Harry has tried to congeal his identity around is taken away from him. He's the leader of his pack, the trio, whatever. And in this book, they're married prefects, and he's left behind. He doesn't have that paper authority. He seems to have lost part of his natural authority because of that. Of course, he gets Dumbledore's army, but we'll get to that. He's always thought of himself as the son of a martyr, basically, a man who sacrificed himself to save his family. And James Potter, everybody loved him, and he finds out in this book that James Potter was a jerk when he was a young man. He sees himself as someone for whom Hogwarts is a reservoir, is a reserve where he's safe and he's at home. And in this book, it becomes so bad at Hogwarts that he thinks that he wants to go back to the Dursleys. I mean, this is the world upside down and inside out. And one of, of course, the things that Harry sees himself as, because everybody else does, is he sees himself as a champion seeker. And in the third and fourth books, his capabilities on a broomstick are what the world sees him as this great flyer. And in the Quidditch match inside this book, just like everything else is taken away from Harry inside that book, that big blue book, Quidditch is taken away from him. We see Harry in the beginning. We see a sort of a foreshadowing of what they call caps locks Harry, where Harry's enraged in the opening with his confrontation with his cousin. And then halfway through the book, and this Quidditch match happens at the pivot of the story. Harry goes caps lock when he, after catching the snitch and defeating the Slytherins, Malfoy taunts him and the Weasleys. Harry and George Weasley finally go and beat him up. And our friend Dolores Umbridge gives them both and Fred a lifetime ban. They can't play Quidditch ever again. And so there's Quidditch that goes on inside the story. I mean, Harry's won that match. They feel like they've lost, even though they've won. And they beat Slytherin, but they get a lifetime ban. They feel like they've lost or whatever. So Harry, again, the reflection of the whole story is that Harry has what's most important to him taken away, and his identity has to congeal around his idea of himself as opponent of Voldemort. That's all of his leadership then goes into Dumbledore's army and the fight to defeat the Dark Lord, to actually reveal the Dark Lord.
Mm-hmm.
But the takeaway from the Quidditch match that reflects the larger story is, of course, in the finish in the Ministry of Magic and the Department of Mysteries, where Harry wins the day. He keeps the bad guys from getting the prophecy. He defeats the Dark Lord's minions, who are all captured, and in a one-on-one battle with the Dark Lord, obviously with Dumbledore's help, he defeats the Dark Lord. The Dark Lord is expelled from him. It's a victory beyond words, but it feels like a loss because of the death of Sirius Black. Harry doesn't come, just like Harry came away from his victory over Slytherin in the Quidditch field, he comes away from the battle against the Dark Lord at the very end, not feeling that he was triumphant and that he was justified in all the things that were done. All the people who had slandered him are shown to be idiots. He should come out of there, pumping his fist, but instead he's clutching his heart because his godfather is dead. And the only Quidditch match inside the story gives us not only a foreshadowing of it, but tells us this is the larger story that's going on inside this book. It's going to be a victory, which is a defeat, and that Harry's going to come away confirmed in his only identity, his prime matter, which is he is the chosen one that has to vanquish the Dark Lord. All right, Emily, Kelly, tell me, am I way off? What else you got?
No, you got it. You got it. It's awesome. And I talk in the essay about Fred and George Weasley and their great escape from Hogwarts, which is really one of my favorite scenes in the whole series. And they escape on their confiscated broomsticks, which still have the iron pegs of their imprisonment swinging dangerously like a bludger below them. So the two beaters are taken off into the sunset. Just reprising their roles on the Quidditch pitch in that book. I just love that moment.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, that in this Negrito book, I mean, something that once made Harry just soar is now, the broomstick is now chained, which is exactly how Harry feels. He feels helpless. He feels angry. He feels like an outsider just watching people. I mean, he really does not feel like he is participating in everything that he should be in the Order of the Phoenix, in being a prefect, in so many things until he really starts the DA. And I love that image of the broomstick being chained. I think that's really cool.
I think you drilled it. And as soon as my wife comes back, we'll switch the camera. I think that's perfect. That what we get is very little Quidditch inside Order of the Phoenix, but the Quidditch references and the actual one Quidditch match, caps locks Harry, gives us caps locks Harry at the end, and Harry's takeaway from his traumatic visit to the Department of Mysteries. On we go to Half-Blood Prince. Emily.
Half-Blood Prince, right. Well, the Quidditch in this, and I think we've got a kind of a continuation going on here from Book 5, there's a lot of foreshadowing. Quidditch seems to act in a way that foreshadows events that are to come. First of all, Harry pretends to use Felix Felicis on Ron before the first Quidditch match of the season because, you know, Ron's got a mental problem and Harry's just trying to help him out with his mental problem. And so, but I think that this could foreshadow Harry giving the Dumbledore's army remnant the rest of the Felix to protect them from the Death Eaters when he goes off to the cave with Voldemort. So he doesn't just pretend to give it to them like he does with Ron, but we have that same element in both Quidditch and in the crisis of the plot. Secondly, these are minor, but I think they're interesting. Luna has got an important and slightly random role in the second match, Gryffindor Hufflepuff. She's commentating, hilariously. She's commentating, talking about loser's liturgy and all these things, and you know, the shapes of the clouds and everything, and McGonagall's grabbing the mic from her and shouting the score, you know, at random. But this kind of foreshadows her very random but somewhat helpful assistance in fighting the Death Eaters that are let into the castle by Malfoy. So she kind of reprises, you know, her friendship with these guys in both of those instances. So another point is, you know, for that Hufflepuff match, that's the second one of the book, Harry is off chasing Malfoy, trying to figure out what Malfoy's up to, and he only just arrives on time for the match, which Ginny notices and shares with Ron, and both of them are concerned. And then he spends most of the match arguing with McLaggen in the midst of the match, and he's running around after Malfoy. Other people have started to notice that both on the Quidditch pitch and off, he's concerning himself with things that could be distracting him from more important problems. Dumbledore certainly thinks so. When Harry's confronting him before they go to the cave, you know, Dumbledore says, "You don't even know what you're talking about. Just come on. Are you coming with me or not? You know, to go fetch this Horcrux." So finally, in this book, Harry misses the last Quidditch match of the season. Of course, it's the last Quidditch match of his life at Hogwarts. And it's the one that's going to decide the championship due to his having used the Sectum Sempra curse on Malfoy. Gryffindor wins it without him, and this seems to foreshadow his powerlessness in the end of the book, in the crisis of the plot, to be able to assist Dumbledore, to be able to save Dumbledore, or to help his friends fight the Death Eaters in the books. He's frozen under his cloak, and it's this horrible, horrible feeling of non-action, and it's that same, you know, it's writ large version of what he feels when he's in detention with Snape, and he knows that Gryffindor's up against this last match without him. So I thought those were sort of minor but significant foreshadowing going on.
Yeah, that's not minor. That last is a real keeper. Sorry to use the keeper word. But that last. Go ahead, Kelly.
Oh, I love that. I love all of that. I would not have thought of any of that. One thing you said, Luna commentating. It just, in a larger sense, in that book, I think Harry has to re-examine so many things. Himself, his father, the Wizarding World. He has to start looking at things in a completely new and different way. And I think that one of Luna's roles in the whole series, and particularly that book, is getting Harry to look at the world in a different way. You know, literally, she's wearing those glasses that helps her see things that others don't, and you know, she has the Quibbler interview that helps the Wizarding World see things that they don't. And
so true.
her commentating as in the Quidditch match is a small reflection of that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she's trying to get Harry to see a world where only having one eyebrow might be desirable. You know,
oh, yeah.
One of my favorite lines in the whole series. But no, you're right. Yeah, I mean, I think that her commentating that match is like, it's so random. Like, who thought that was a good idea? You know, that it's got to point to Rowling said role in the story.
Rowling said that she put Luna in there because she was tired of writing Quidditch stories. And the only way she could get through it would be to do something novel, like to have Luna do the commentary.
So Rowling herself was
I think
distracted.
you two have made a better connection as to why she's actually in there.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on. I mean, those are great, Emily. Again, magnificent catches. The correspondences between the Quidditch inside the story and the takeaways from the whole thing. What we're supposed to see, not only are we seeing that we have this double-layered story between the Seekers and the Quaffle players, but we're seeing specific correspondences inside the books to the takeaway from those specific stories. Now to the last book. Now, I said about the fourth book that there was no Quidditch in it, and I was obviously so very, very wrong because of the Quidditch World Cup. But Emily, are you going to tell me there's Quidditch inside Deathly Hallows? I mean, I wrote a book on Deathly Hallows. Okay, give me a break. Where is the Quidditch in Deathly Hallows?
For some reason, I have tabs all over it, so I don't know what that's all about. It could be from other projects.
How many Deathly Hallows do you see on my wall over here? I got 4 Deathly Hallows. One still in the Amazon box.
I know. I see that you have. I also have more than one copy of it, but I think I'm harboring one for a fugitive. Anyway, there's more stories behind that. You know what? The biggest thing in Deathly Hallows, and again, I do talk about this in the essay. The biggest thing is it's not Quidditch, it's the memory of Quidditch, because of that really strange bequest that Dumbledore leaves to Harry, which is the golden snitch from his first Quidditch match. And the trio, you know, just like Ron's Deluminator, you know, they're like, what the heck is this? You know, like, why would he give it? You know, this seems like they know better than to think that Dumbledore is just giving them sentimental things. You know, but they don't know what they mean, and Hermione doesn't know what her book means either, and so this little round ball, you know, he carries it with him the whole time, and of course, you know, this is the symbol of his, you know, divination. This is the symbol of this complete process, you know, that's going to happen with him alchemically, and it's, you know, I open at the close, and what it opens to reveal is, you know, all those who have been supporting him in life and in death, who are going to stand shoulder to shoulder with him when he has to do what he has to do. And they're going to just surround him with love and protection and carry him through this decision that is going to mean his death, and there it opens to reveal that this is not the only world there is, and that these folks are going to guide him into this next world. It's just like, I mean, I'm surprised I'm not a puddle talking about it, because I usually am. Ask my students. I have these moments.
All right.
Union of Saints. I love them.
Tell me about. I'll break in here so you can have a little cry here by yourself. Kelly talked about this, or pointed to this briefly when we were in Philosopher's Stone. Do you think the last book could have been titled Harry Potter and the Resurrection Stone? Do you think it's that big of a tie-off, the connection between the Philosopher's Stone and the Resurrection Stone? That they're kind of inverted, the same thing, just like you can live forever, or you can have those with you so that they've never died? Is that a parallel? Is that something he's trying to draw with it? That sphere of the Seekers seeking the golden snitch?
You know, when I first heard the title, you know, we heard the title, of course, a couple months or whatever before the book came out, and I just, like, shot onto the ceiling and stayed there for about 2 weeks, because to me, I thought, you know, Deathly Hallows, what does that even mean? And I kept calling it Harry Potter and the Communion of Saints. Because what are Deathly Hallows? What are the things that are hallowed in death? Like, what is the, you know, what is this in the Christian tradition? Well, this is the saints. This is the holy ones who have gone before. And so, you know, these hallows are this in the story, you know, there's supposed to be this way that you can master death. But the only way to master death is to, you know, greet it as a friend. You know, to greet death as a friend, and this is what the Communion of Saints is all about. It's about this idea that this love that we share as Christians, as people of God, transcends death. It's a love that's stronger than death, and that death cannot destroy. and this this is what Harry is a seeker of. Besides Voldemort's Horcruxes, it's rather crude to talk about him just as a seeker of Voldemort's Horcruxes. He's a seeker of this little round ball, and John, as you and I have discussed, round things are important, especially round gold things are important, and they symbolize, divinization.
I want to go back to one of the great catches you made at the start of this discussion about Philosopher's Stone, where you said that his catching the first snitch of his career in a game was with his mouth rather than his hands. So this is sort of like will and desire, and his mouth was more of his assimilation or communion with things. It was
yeah.
And we see that at the end of Philosopher's Stone, that he has to stand pretty much desire-free or ego-free at least. He wants to do the right thing, but that's in communion really with, or a reflection of the will of Dumbledore. What he wants to do is there is, an illusion of himself in the mirror. Now, how about at the very finish where he has to choose between Hallows and Horcruxes, and all of Harry's desires, his hands, his will, are about getting hold of these Horcruxes.
The Horcruxes, yeah. The Hallows. He still wants the Hallows. Yes, I know.
And
I didn't use Voldemort and Dumbledore today, but I had to do the Horcruxes and Hallows. All right, yeah. Harry wants to pursue the Hallows. He wants to get that wand, and he wants to be able to, to fight off the Dark Lord.
Right.
But he's been told, he knows that the single eye of the heart of Dumbledore wants him to get those Horcruxes, and so he submits himself to that. He's just one of these not my will but thy will moments, and that's pretty much the end of the story. As soon as Harry has his moment in Dobby's grave and makes that decision to pursue the Horcruxes rather than the Hallows, game over. He rises from a grave on Easter weekend, and we know that the story is going to have a happy ending. That and that, as you say, is a reflection of what happened in the very first book with his capture of the snitch with his mouth, and his getting of the Philosopher's Stone at the end, and we see the stone and the snitch tied together there, the way they're tied together in Deathly Hallows.
Yeah,
that is a super catch, and that's wow. Kelly, can you top that? What have you got, Kelly?
Not a contest now. No one's keeping score. There's no snitch here.
No, I mean, just as Harry could not have found the Resurrection Stone if he did not make that decision to go after Horcruxes and not search for the one thing that could keep him possibly alive forever. Just like in book 1, where he makes the decision not to. He looked in the mirror and he could not see using the stone for anything other than preventing Voldemort from having it, and that's exactly what the Horcruxes is all about. He chooses not to find something for himself, but to find something to destroy Voldemort. And I think that's just an excellent, such a cool parallel. And I think to answer your question about could it have been named, Harry Potter and the Resurrection Stone, I think no, because it's not about saying no to one thing now. It's about saying no to the Deathly Hallows, all three. Saying no time and time and time again. No, this is not what I want. I will face death on my own terms. Everything that we've learned throughout the books, throughout all the Quidditch scenes, all lead up to this. It's saying, no, this is how I'm going to face my death. This is how I'm going to face Voldemort. And this is how I'm going to ultimately win, not the game, because there's no games here anymore. This is how I'm going to win at my spiritual enlightenment.
Bang. I think that's perfect finish. I mean, really, I think I've counted 37 parallels between Deathly Hallows and Philosopher's Stone. And I think we have really the crowning, 38th connection really here, and how the stones work together, and Harry's will versus his decision not to follow his ego concerns and desires, but to do what he knows is the right thing to do, the hard choices that define who he really is. And that allows him to rise from the dead, in effect. And that's a magnificent thing. All right, let's go around the room here and take a vote. Does it seem like the Strand thesis and the Granger corollary are pretty much confirmed by this first examination, Emily? This is a final examination, Emily, or is this still a work in progress?
Because now I'm thinking, you're saying this about the stones, and that each stone tells us so much about approaches to immortality, and that's what this whole series is about how we approach this human desire for immortality. Do we approach it in a way that destroys others and desires bodily longevity, or do we approach it in a way that appreciates the fact that friendship goes on, and that we will never be without those ones that we love, even though death can. So that's an essay right there, John. But yeah, no, I think we need some more hands on the deck here with spotting these Quidditch parallels between, not just the overarching story, but in each book. It's the same as you said that, the ring theory extends both to the whole series and also within each book. So, yep, more scholars needed, please. Join us.
Kelly, what do you think?
I mean, everything that the two of you were saying, just as is always the case with Harry Potter studies, I am just blown away time after time. You guys just did such an amazing job, and things I never thought of, and I have read these books so many times, and just wonderful. I think it matches up very well.
All right, Kelly, because Emily and I are your senior, we want you to write up the essay for Harry Potter for Nerds 3. You get to write up the Granger corollary to the Strand thesis about every book being the Quidditch matches reflecting what's going on inside that book.
John, I think this is more than an essay.
Yeah, I still have to write my thesis. I don't know. Maybe I'll just ride on Emily's coattails there.
I like it. Well, you know what? I mean, all of Potter scholarship now at this point is leaping from the shoulders of the Potter pundits that have come before, or whatever. All this stuff is so fascinating to me. And Emily, really, again, except for your insights about the symbol set of Quidditch, I know that I would still be stuck with Quidditch as just a schoolboy novel trope that you have to have a game it's the guy's good at, or whatever. Now I think all of those spots, which before I was thinking, here's this silly game that doesn't make any sense at all. Now we're seeing things like 150-point parallels. I mean, that Rowling has really invested herself in these books with that game to say that the people who are watching the Quidditch matches are like the readers reading the book. They're seeing the same experience in the dynamic of that game and that sport. So again, all hats off to you, Emily, for that insight about the symbol set of the game. None of this happens except for that break.
Years.
Thank you for making me like Quidditch.
I know.
Okay, I'm gonna break this off, and it's going to be posted for those people who couldn't get in tonight, those people who couldn't make it tonight. Please leave your comments underneath the YouTube thing, or however you want to do this. And thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Kelly, for all the time you put into researching this stuff.
Thank you both.
And for your magnificent conversation tonight.
Thank you.
Stop the broadcast.
Stop the